Welcome, Kristofor, to Keep What You Earn. It's so great to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So, admittedly, we don't have a lot of folks that have your level of expertise on the show, which is why I'm so excited to talk to you because this is a topic that I think is often overlooked and underappreciated, especially in small business, because we've got so many things going on. We've got the legal, the accounting, the IT tech, but we never really put that much attention on how am I protecting my business from a security standpoint. And I think that that is so needed right now. So can you tell us how you got interested in this subject and sort of your background and backstory here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've spent 15 years working for the federal government as a special agent, and I worked in the better part of the last 8 years or so in fraud prevention and doing large scale multinational investigations involving largely the Indian call center industry. So anytime you've ever gotten a call from somebody saying this is the IRS, this is the Social Security Administration, I mean, you may get actual calls from the IRS, but most folks don't. And those are typically based out of call centers in India. And I led a team that investigated and took down some of the larger call centers over there that were involved in these sort of scams. So on the small business side of the house, I'm married to an entrepreneur. My wife has run a small business for a number of years that's had some incredible growth and has scaled recently over the last 2 years. And I've seen some of the growing pains that she's gone through and some of the things that she's been exposed to in that online marketplace. So it seemed like a natural marriage for me to put my expertise in fraud prevention and fraud investigations, large scale criminal investigations, and my experience as the spouse and husband of a small business owner in an online marketplace, and kind of marry those things up and offer services to small business owners and entrepreneurs to help them protect what they're building and growing.
Love it. So can you talk about some of the ways that small business owners can be subject to fraud? I mean, we know the call centers and you get the phone call from the IRS, which by the way, the IRS will never call you.
Yeah,
Uh
let's just put that out there.
let's put that out there. The IRS will not call, text. Assume the IRS is basically cavemen. They use fax machines and physical mail to get in touch with
Very
you.
much so.
They might as well
Yep.
use horse-drawn carriage. So can you go through some of the ways that small business owners might actually see and feel a fraud happening in their life?
Yeah. I think it's like for most people, you're a small business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you're growing something, and typically it's just you're a solopreneur to start, and you may be growing and building, and especially if you're in an online environment, you're hiring people that are all over the place. So you're interacting a lot in the marketplace, and that exposes you by being in the marketplace, whether that's hiring, whether that's being on social media, whether that is selling, marketing. The more you're in the marketplace, the more exposed you are to other people in the marketplace that are looking to take advantage of you. So you put yourself out there and you become a greater target. That goes with the territory. Where entrepreneurs tend to slip up is that these are high energy people. These are alpha type people who are making rapid decisions for the purposes of scaling their business, growing their business, gaining market share. They're fishing in a blue ocean and they want to keep it as blue as possible. So they're go, go, go. And where I see issues with that is, when you're driving 100 miles an hour towards that goal, a lot of the things that can protect you, that you can do to take care of yourself along the way, kind of tend to fall by the wayside. You say, I'm going to come back and take care of that later. I'm going to get that after the fact. And a lot of times it leaves your flanks open and your backside open for people to take advantage. Scammers are at their root, it's about psychology. The game is about less about technology and more about psychology. So it's more about getting people under the ether and getting people to trust them and taking advantage of situations, finding triggers. And so entrepreneurs are particularly open to that sort of thing because they're always joining masterminds. They're always looking to interact with as many people as possible, to spread their word, to spread their product, to get in front of as many audiences as possible. And by doing so, they can sometimes open themselves up to the con man who tells them everything they want to hear, sells them the perfect product, but is really taking advantage of their good nature.
And not just selling them a product. I would feel as an entrepreneur, I would feel that if someone was trying to sell me something, it already feels like a scam. If they're also if
Yeah.
they're being extra, aggressive with selling me something. But if someone is pretending to be a customer, that would be the psychology, right? Is coming in where
Yeah.
people expect to interact with this person, or it's someone that they should be trusting and talking to?
Yeah, and I tell folks that most scammers, you're going to deal with people who are domestic, but a lot of these folks are located overseas. They can't reach out and actually touch you. So the entire strength of of what they're doing is in how they can reach out and touch you through the internet, through the telephone. And so these are very folks that are very compelling at the stories that they tell. They're very good at marketing themselves. So they share a lot of, I hate to say it this way, but they share a lot of similar qualifiers as a very good salesperson, somebody who is selling a legitimate product and doing something legitimately. And also, when you're in the customer acquisition process, you're putting yourself out there, you're putting your offer out there, and people are probing your business and looking for vulnerabilities that they can exploit. And so they're seeking additional information from you, and you're more willing to give it at that point because you're trying to bring in customers. So it really is a fine line deciding how much information to offer to your audience for marketing purposes, while also recognizing how that can make you vulnerable.
Totally. And if someone feels like they are or might be being scammed, you know, if they have kind of this like sixth sense, right? Of like, this kind of feels shady. What
Mhm.
should they do?
Pump the brakes. Anybody who's putting a hard sell on you, they're going to use, scarcity, urgency, the same things we use in sales. This deal won't last. You got to act now. You're going to miss out on this great investment opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. And as an entrepreneur, you have a tendency to, it's messy action, right? We're gonna move fast. We're gonna go as quickly as we can because we want to beat the market. It goes against your nature as an entrepreneur to pump the brakes and take deep breaths because you have a higher risk tolerance than most people. So my greatest advice to anyone is to pump the brakes. If something sounds too good to be true, it almost certainly is. If someone's telling you have to act now, that there's scarcity or urgency, you almost certainly can wait 24 or 48 hours. There's almost never a deal that's going to evaporate in the next 10 minutes. So disconnect the call and get off the call and kind of settle it down. Do your research. Take your time to do your background research and find out, does this person have an actual mailing address? Is it a PO box? Is this email legitimate? Did you look at the header on the email that you got? Do you actually know this person that you've connected with on LinkedIn that's now offering you something? Do your due diligence and you're much less likely to be scammed.
Yeah. And actually one of my tactics, you can tell me if this works or not, is I try to keep them on the phone as long as possible and ask personal
Oh yeah.
questions about them.
Yes.
And what's the name of your manager? What's the name of the
Sure.
company that you work for? I'm looking up your website right now. And by the time
Mhm.
they realize that I'm trying to figure out if they're real, they hang up on me and they give up.
That's excellent. Excellent advice. And, and I tell people as well, what you're doing when you do that is it's actually a service to other would-be victims because a lot of these calls are coming in over voice over IP networks from overseas, and it's costing them money every second they spend on the phone. So, they'll try to pop the parachute and get out of that call as quickly as possible if they realize someone's onto them. So I tell folks, especially people who have been victims before and they're coming back, the scammers are coming back to the well for a second round. If you're comfortable with it, keep them on the phone as long as you can because you are keeping them from victimizing someone else. As long as you're not giving them personal information as you're doing that, as long as it's a one-way street where you're receiving information, you're oftentimes going to be able to trip them up because they have a very specific script that they're going off of and they expect certain answers. It's like a choose your adventure. If this, then this. So when you start asking them questions and you come back around to it, you said your name was John, and then later on you said your name was Paul, and they're saying yes every time, you're going to recognize really quickly that this is somebody who is working off of a script and not an actual person who's selling something to you that's of value to them.
Yeah. And that's a really great point. So here's what's funny. I haven't been doing that intentionally with that knowledge. Now I have that knowledge, but I've been doing it just because I assume they get paid for how many calls they make. And I'm trying to waste as much time. I'm just more petty than that. I'm trying to
They
waste more
typically get
time.
called on the close. They get called on what they get percentage of what they close. So as a general rule, so keeping them on the line, it's costing them sales time, it's costing them money, and it's costing
Exactly.
them more overhead just to keep the operation running.
Yeah. So against your better instinct, just hang up on them, keep them on the phone as long as possible and tick them off.
Yeah, and honestly, there is, I should say there are some cautions with that. Some of these people are very petty. I've worked with victims who have kind of gone, they get a little spicy, threatening, and back and forth with these scammers. And, they've called up local police departments in your area and said, hey, there's a hostage situation at this person's house. So we call those swatting incidents, where somebody, will go the extra mile to go after, but it's very exceedingly rare. And it typically happens when you have a particularly combative conversation with one of these folks, and somebody decides, I'm going to ruin that guy's day. But for the most part, they recognize somebody who is onto them, and they're going to put that telephone number on the list that says, this is not somebody that we can victimize. Now, if you have been victimized by, and something like 7% of Americans, it cuts across all socioeconomic levels, all education levels, all, race, gender, et cetera. There is no scam victim archetype. It's everyone gets these calls, and everyone is subject to fall victim. But if you do fall victim to one of these, you're more likely to be victimized again, because they're going to keep coming back to that well, and your number is going to get circulated on these lead lists that these call centers circulate within. They've got 20,000 victims on one list, and they're going to resell that to other call centers who are now going to come at you with different scams, because they know that you're somebody who's fallen for it once. So expect that if you do fall victim for a scam, that your number is going to be out there, and you're going to be on the list.
So here, a couple of more questions would be, if someone feels like they have been scammed, right, and they want to go and see, like, are there any resources for the general public to access to see, hey, I got a phone number, or I have a name, or this is the company that they were using? Is there a way to look them up to verify?
Now you can do, obviously, Google is the investigator's best friend. Folks ask me, they think it's all CSI, and we've got, some big screen where I can manipulate things and have access to all this information. The reality is, like, Google is an investigator's best friend. An inquisitive mind and a search engine can get you a lot of things. You want to know physical addresses. A lot of these, and websites are typically set up on an industrial scale. So they may have some backstopping to make you feel comfortable making this investment. But if you scroll down further on the page, you're going to see a lot of that stuff that's just plugged in, that boilerplate stuff that's plugged in. If you look for addresses, you're often going to find post office boxes. A lot of state agencies, state corporations' offices are open records. You don't have to pay any sort of access fee to look at, Florida, for instance, or Georgia. You can look up a corporation that's licensed there and find out if it's a real corporation. So if they're giving you a name of a company, usually you can go on the Secretary of State's website and find that out if it's real. But yeah, those are some simple things that you can do. If you feel you've been a victim of a scam, or you get a telephone number and you want to make sure that authorities are aware of it, the two best resources for you are to go to ic3.gov, which is the Internet Criminal Complaint Center. And that is run by the FBI. And that's essentially a collective point for all scam victims, whether law enforcement is uploading to that, local PDs and sheriff's offices and things like that, or victims themselves can upload, and you can fill out, this is the call that I received, this is who they said their name was, this is where the phone number came from, this is the company name, all of that stuff. And that's a resource for guys like me who conduct these investigations to go in and say, okay, I've got 50 calls from this number, so I know that this is a hot number, someone that we could go after and exploit and try to arrest. And then the second website is run by the Federal Trade Commission. It's called Consumer Sentinel. So you would go on consumersentinel.gov and you can file a report with them. And it's the same sort of database, but sometimes the leads are different than what you get in IC3. So I would recommend that anyone who receives these calls and has the time to do it reports to those databases, because that one extra report might be the difference between catching this person because they slipped up and gave you a little more information than the last guy. So I would highly recommend that.
Perfect. So you mentioned that 7% in general across the board,
Yeah.
are victims of fraud. And that still may be, I know you mentioned entrepreneurs, we still feel bulletproof. We still feel like we can do no wrong. And that as long as we are, it's like driving, as long as we're driving safely, we're fine, but you have to be careful of the other people.
Right.
And you can never control what enters into your life that you don't have control over. So
right.
Let's talk about if an entrepreneur is listening right now and saying, yeah, but it's really unlikely to happen to me. And I'm really good about sniffing out these guys.
Sure,
What would you have to say to that? And what are some things that they can do to be more proactive in protecting themselves from being
absolutely.
one of these statistics?
So smart people get scammed. I've had, in my career, probably the job title that is most common among my victims is healthcare professional, either doctor or nurse. And those are smart people. Smart people get scammed. Entrepreneurs will get scammed. You are a professional in your line of work, and you have to understand that these people are professionals in theirs. This is what they do all day long. And so they're professionals in understanding verbal judo and human psychology and how to exploit your triggers and how to identify your triggers. And so knowing and recognizing that you are a victim and being vigilant is your best line of defense. Like, you are a potential victim and being vigilant. Um, Going into any situation saying that'll never happen to me, I'm too smart, is a surefire way to end up on the wrong side of something. So recognize that you are going to be targeted, and that the more information that you're putting out there, the more information is available to exploit. So as an entrepreneur who is especially engaged on social media, I understand that from my wife's business, that you have to target and you have to calibrate with your audience, and you have to put certain things out there that are going to speak to that audience. But that is also going to open you up, because social media becomes a all-you-can-eat buffet for scammers. And so they're going to stumble onto your page, and they're going to find ways to look at and exploit what it is that you do. So recognize that the things that draw in your audience are also going to draw in the people who are targeting you, and be cognizant of that when you're posting. Are you posting things that are exploitable, like your license plate on your car, your address, details about your family that you don't need to be posting, details about where you're located, and tagging yourself at certain locations at certain times that are allowing somebody to see that you're not home, or giving just little information that can be exploited is a big issue I see with entrepreneurs. So recognize that your marketing can be done in a way that is secure, and certainly that's what my team does, is working with people to help identify those vulnerabilities.
Perfect. And that is so true. It's something that, my husband and I have been actively trying to be cognizant of lately, is, the location tagging and other things, and things
Mhm.
that a business owner thinks are really good habits to do from a customer building standpoint and from an engagement standpoint. Just
Right.
understand that there's also risks associated with that. Not to say don't do it, but to be aware of what that could
Right.
bring in and remain vigilant is what you're saying.
Awareness and vigilance are your two best weapons. You know, Understanding exactly that you do need to build your business, and you do need to have an online presence oftentimes. But the reality is, there's two sides to that coin, and you are putting yourself out there for your audience. You're also putting yourself out there for people who don't want to buy your product. They want to make you their product. So understand that.
Great. And what stories do you have now? Obviously, protecting identity is protecting a lot of
Sure.
the details, right? Because we're here. What stories do you have of incidents that you could share so people understand how this can actually show up in their life?
One really good one for small business owners and entrepreneurs, especially if you are a consultant, which I think a lot of folks kind of wander in, that, which certainly where my business model is, and my wife's business model to an extent is consulting and management consulting. So you put yourself out there, maybe on LinkedIn and on other job search websites, as an expert in your field, right? And what I've seen a lot, and what is a common scam right now that consultants are particularly falling prey to, are offers to assist with a business that's based overseas, that wants somebody to be their US based representative to help put payments in the bank, to help with customer service, things like that. And they are going to exploit, based on your LinkedIn profile, based on what you're putting out there as your area of expertise. They're going to craft an offer that is going to seem like just this incredible offer. Like, you're going to get X percentage for handling, accounts payable for this company. Money's going to flow into, you're going to set up a bank account that's going to flow into that, and you're going to write the checks to, et cetera, et cetera. and you're essentially going to be operating as a consultant and moving money on behalf of a foreign-based corporation. We're seeing that a lot, and what ends up happening is you're setting up an account that they're going to be passing fake checks through, and then you're the one who's going to be holding the hot potato when it's over. So that $40,000 that passed through your account that they pulled out in cash from an ATM in Dallas somewhere, the second it hit your account, and then the bank 2-3 days later comes back and says this was a fake cashier's check, this bounced. And you're on the hook now for $40,000 or $50,000. We see that all the time right now. That's a very hot scam, and it's just because people put a ton of information on their LinkedIn profile that identifies them as an expert in this particular oil and gas or whatever the industry is, and they become particularly easy to exploit because they are looking for consulting work. They're looking for that sort of contracted work to do a service on behalf of somebody in that industry. So be aware of those sorts of schemes. If somebody's asking you to open bank accounts and move money, really think long and hard about whether or not that's legitimate. If somebody is trying to communicate with you by text message and email and won't get on the Zoom call, won't pick up the phone. If somebody, I hate to say, if somebody has a foreign accent, be cautious, because we do a ton of work with people that are overseas and they're legitimate business people. But if somebody has a lack of a command of the English language, who is cold emailing you or cold reaching out to you, that is something that you should be concerned about. And you should do your due diligence to make sure that person is legitimate and find out where they are actually located and who they actually are, and speak to people who have actually worked with them or know them. But that's one that's in particular. I just dealt with a victim just recently here in the Houston area who, I say $40,000. That's a starting point. This guy lost a lot more than that. So be wary of that.
Absolutely. And actually, it's funny you bring that one up. That happened to me. I
Oh,
wasn't
wow.
I wasn't a victim of it, but as an accountant, it's always about I have a client who
Right.
is abroad but has American tax liability, and we need someone to serve as this. Like
Yes.
this actually happened. And I actually have in my firm a policy on I don't do anything international. I just can't, it's not my area of expertise. It's not my specialty.
Sure.
But also, there was a second layer to that decision to not do anything international because of those types of things. I just said, I'm just going to freeze up and say, I'm sorry, I don't do any international clients. And
Yes.
that policy alone, although there are plenty of people who I would love to serve internationally, that policy alone has just helped me give a little peace of mind to know that, this is something that I can freely say no to, or my assistant can say no to, or, anyone who's working with me, and say, I'm sorry, we don't take those types of clients, because I don't even want to entertain and get down the rabbit hole of engaging with some of those folks, because it is very common.
Very much so. Yeah. So those sorts of things, outreach through LinkedIn, and just honestly, that social media in general opens you up to a lot of different things, but not even from a business perspective. We have a lot of people who are small business owners and entrepreneurs, but they're just people, right? And we all get phone calls. We all get these sorts of these outreach that are just hitting us every single day about your extended warranty and your Medicare and all these different types of scam attempts. And we all say, who's falling for these, right? And there is a certain amount of that. There's a JV element to some of these scammers, but some are very good. And small business owners can fall victim to any of those scams, in addition to the more classic scams that hit small businesses, like fake, listings for directory listings, or phony billing schemes, email compromise, business email compromise, W-2 phishing, things of that nature that are out there that are as your business grows, are more likely to impact you. But at the end of the day, you're just another person who's picking up the phone when it calls, and you could fall victim to any number of scams if you're not vigilant and careful. So, there is never going to be, and I say this, and you mentioned this at the beginning of the call, there's never going to be a federal government agency that calls you and tells you you owe money and you need to pay it right now, or you're going to be arrested. That is never, ever going to happen. And you would be blown away by the number of people, smart people, that believe that they're on the verge of being arrested by the feds if they don't pay $30,000 immediately. It's never going to happen.
Yeah. And they play off of that fear. Like you said, the psychology, they know
It's the
that
psychology.
people are terrified of the IRS. That's why it's always
Absolutely.
used.
Absolutely.
They
Yeah,
know this.
absolutely.
We know you guys are terrified of the IRS, and that's why
Yeah.
they're exploiting it. Now,
Yeah.
here's another example that I've come across many times, and I don't know if and I'm assuming you've seen this. Clearly, that you have more experience than I do in this, but many of my clients in the past couple of years have gotten physical letters. Now, here's another element of the psychology. When you get a physical letter as well, people are starting to get like led on to the phone call thing, but
Yeah.
they're getting
Yeah.
physical letters from scammers that look like IRS letters. They look like legitimate tax notices. It looks so close to. But here's how I have been advising them, and I want you guys to do this too. If you get a letter from a tax agency that says you owe money and you don't really know why, and it's very confusing, I look at, where are they telling you to send the money? Where are they telling you to send the money? Because I had a client who said, for example, let's say it was Virginia was where they were based, and they have something that says, please send a check to Oregon. And I'm like,
Yep.
if this is for the tax agency in Virginia, why aren't they asking you to send it to someone in Virginia? And
Wiring instructions going overseas or
yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So if you're wondering, always ask the question. And I'm really proud of you guys. If you're my client, I'm really proud of you that every time you get a notice, your first question is this legit? And why am I getting this? So if you're asking, is this legit? Look at, where are they telling you to send money? That is my
Yes.
first piece of advice, because
Yeah.
it will look fishy. And, if you have a really good accountant who hopefully doesn't trigger you to get that in the first place. But if you are going to get a letter and you're not sure, it's kind of like when I've heard this practice where if you're getting pulled over by the police, to call the police station and say, is there an officer following me right now? If you're not sure if they're really a cop.
Yeah.
And then with every right to ask, is there someone following me right now? Obviously, if you're going 100 miles an hour, yes, they're probably a cop slowing you down.
Right.
But if it's totally arbitrary and you're like, why is this person following me? You can call and ask. Similarly, as an accountant, if you work with us, we will call the agency and say, what is this notice number? I have done that before, and they've said that is not us.
Yes.
So you can absolutely validate. There are so many different ways that you can take a breath, take a pause, and not react emotionally to these things. And that will save you thousands of dollars, right?
Very much so. And that is a great tip. And I think, this all boils down to, the single best tip is take a breath, pump the brakes. And we do, you hit it right on the head. We react emotionally to things like this, right? We get something like that in the mail, and your fear, and that's what they're playing on. That's exactly what they want to exploit, is that fear. And so you're reacting to, I don't want, federal agents pawing around in my finances. I don't want any of this. So I'm going to write the check. I'm just going to take care of this and get this off of my plate. And what you'll notice a lot of times when you receive notices like that, whether it's letters, faxes, emails, they can get agency letterhead, clip art from anywhere. That's not hard. And you can put together, you can find actual IRS forms and DHS forms and all these other government forms, state agency tax forms on the internet. It's all publicly available. And so you can create something that looks very official. Pay attention to the language in one of those letters. Something coming from the federal government, from a state tax agency, it's going to be a form letter. It's going to be very anodyne, and everything that's in that letter has been poured over by someone's office of counsel. So it's going to be 2 or 3, very anodyne, very basic lines that are telling you exactly what the issue is. And there's typically going to be something, that's plug and play. It's the cut and paste amount you owe, or whatever the case may be. You're going to see oftentimes these letters, they kind of overdo it. And the language, you'll notice oftentimes, especially if it's a scam originating from West Africa, from Cameroon, where French is the first language, or from Nigeria, where the type of English they speak is based on British English, not American English. You're going to see certain things in the language and the syntax and how it's written that should be triggers for you. You should see that in email receipts that you get from PayPal or from Amazon telling you your account's been shut down. You're going to look at that and you're going to say, wait a second, hang on. Why is color spelled COLOUR, or the British affectation of that? Why is this syntax seem, like it's written in a Romance language and not English? And oftentimes that's because the author of that is going to be based in a foreign country, and they're doing their best through Google Translate or whatever other means they have to write something that sounds like official government correspondence. We often see when they're going after individuals who are in the country on like H-1B visas or things like that, they use language that is more common overseas. For instance, we would refer to our embassies overseas as embassies, and we refer to our consulate offices, which are kind of subs of the embassies, as your consulate offices. The British and some of the the British Empire, former British Empire nations like Australia and New Zealand, they refer to consulates as the High Commission. And you'll see that in some of the language that you receive in these letters is they'll refer to things that don't make sense in common American English. So be very careful when you receive something in the mail to read it and say that isn't right. That language doesn't make sense. The IRS is not going to use terminology that's going to trip you up. It's going to be very basic and very direct.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. And as always, if you're wondering if what you're getting is legit and it's from the IRS or a tax agency, forward it to your accountant, put it up on your portal, send it to
Right.
your accountant and get a second opinion on that, because not only do folks like us know when the IRS is sending a wave of letters, because most of our clients are getting the same type of letter, but
Hmm.
also we know when the scammers are sending the same type of letter to our clients. So there was a
Right.
wave of these fake letters going out to the point where
Hmm.
I put up a blog post and a Facebook post about it, because I said at least 3 or 4 clients have now come to me and said, "What is this?"
Right.
So, and they're not smart about that because they're doing it all at once. And
Right.
then we
Uh,
we all kind of like get the sniff test out there and we say, "Hey, there's this thing going around right now. Be vigilant." So you always
and you
want to
can check
be paying attention.
irs.gov and you can check for that, because they're pretty good about talking about the current scams, especially coming up on tax season as we are over the next 2 3 or well,
Mhm.
when this airs, we're going to be right in the tax season. So as that's coming up, be aware of those things and go to irs.gov. But also a lot of people don't know this agency exists, but the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration is known as TIGTA. And so tigda.gov, they are responsible actually for investigating any scam involving misuse of IRS letterhead, impersonation of IRS employees. That's going to be the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration is actually going to be the investigative agency. And they are a great resource. If you go on their website about what's going on, what numbers are being used, and you can file a report if you've received anything from the quote IRS on their website as well and let them investigate it.
Love it. So I hope you guys are taking notes, copying these websites, bookmarking them. Understand that you have every right to protect yourself. And for as many resources as the scammers have to get in touch with you and exploit you, we also have resources to combat them, like Kristofor and like consultants and these websites and all of these agencies that are out to protect you. So make sure you're utilizing them and you're aware of them. I think that this isn't shared enough, Kristofor. Do you agree?
I agree. And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of noise out there. And, when these people do get, folks assume that overseas scammers or the people that they rely on in the US to help launder the proceeds. And there's a tremendous money laundering network typically with any of these scams is based domestically. Folks assume that once they've lost that money, that's gone for good. And that is often the case. It is difficult for law enforcement to track these folks down, but we do reach out and touch a lot of people. And we do get a lot of justice and have in my career and various agencies, especially agencies that are concerned with elder fraud. So there's various task forces around the country, whether it's state or local agencies or federal agencies that pool their resources and they go after these sort of scammers because they, in large part, target elderly Americans. And so, yeah, these people can be caught. Don't act like being a victim is just hide under a rock and say that's $15,000 gone. You may not get that money back, but there's a good chance you're going to get some justice if you report it and you reach out. And the difference is here, law enforcement, it's reactive, right? You're going after something after the victim has been victimized. The best thing you can do to protect yourself is be proactive and spread the word to protect others. So if you're a small business owner and you've been approached for one of these scams, don't think that everybody's going to be as smart as you and is going to, hang up the phone or recognize it as a scam. Notify people, tell people on your Facebook page, tell people on your blog posts that, hey, this is what's out there. And, for my fellow small business owners, be on the lookout. And you're doing the community a service.
You're doing community a service and your brand a service as a trustworthy, reliable person that people will come to you and say, I'm really happy, Kristofor shared that because now I'm going to keep checking in to see what's going on because he's going to be open about that and share what he's seeing in the marketplace, right?
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate all of this. I learned a ton. So I have, even TIGTA, I did not know about that. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
here's what's interesting as tax and accounting professionals, if you're listening, this is crucial information for us to know to share with our clients because this is essential to help everyone, as we say on this podcast, keep more of what they earn, right? Either via
Absolutely.
saving in taxes or or via protecting ourselves from fraud and scammers. So I so appreciate you taking the time to be on the show and to
Absolutely.
share all that knowledge with us. So tell us how we can work with you to protect ourselves, what resources you have for small business owners, and how you can help further.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me. It's been a lot of fun. I have a website. It's secure-entrepreneur.com. And anyone who's interested, who's a small business owner, entrepreneur, personal individual can reach out to me. I have high touch services where I kind of will act as a fractional chief security officer on behalf of a small business owner or entrepreneur to help identify your vulnerabilities, risks, threats, come up with a mitigation plan that's going to help you operate in the marketplace in a way that you feel more secure, and you're making sure that you're aware of what your risks are and you're mitigating them. But we're also offering various courses for small business owners where it can be more of a follow along and do it at your own speed and kind of learn how to protect your own business and fraud proof your small business. So we offer different levels for different people, and certainly it's all on that website, secure-entrepreneur.com, or you can find me on Instagram. It's at the Secure Entrepreneur.
Love it. I was just going to ask what your Instagram handle was because, guys, I know you learned something new in this episode. I know that you did not know all of this. Don't kid yourselves. You learned something great from Kristofor today. So, if you could, as a thank you to him, post on your stories, grab this episode, link it would be awesome, and tag us both to let us know what you learned today so you can spread the wealth, spread the knowledge, and you can provide value to your audience by sharing one of these tips that he shared with you today, and make more people aware of what they need to do to protect themselves. So I really appreciate your time, Kristofor. Thank you for all the knowledge you shared today. I hope to have you back again to talk more about this as we see more things unfold in the next year.
Absolutely. Would love to come back anytime. And thanks so much for having me.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys.